But getting back to my point of Trump voters not knowing exactly what they signed on for, just to show you how a good writer or a good collaboration of writers can say so much in one sentence, I want you to look at this one from the New York Times yesterday. Look at the headline, quote, "4 more years of unpredictability, the world prepares for Trump's return," end quote. Jeez, that sounds like a trailer for a gruesome horror movie. And sadly, that's pretty close to what we're about to get. Friday the 13th, the return of Michael Myers. November the 5th, the return of Donald Trump. There's not a whole lot of space between those two, either artistically or realistically, except that one of them isn't opposed to wearing a mask. But here's the sentence from the story, quote, "In nations that leaned on the United States to defeat fascism during World War II, there is still a sense of shock that American voters have elected a felon who has promoted threats of violence against journalists and said he would use the courts and the military against domestic enemies," end quote. One sentence that said so much. I'll repeat it. In nations that leaned on the United States to defeat fascism during World War II, there is still a sense of shock that American voters have elected a felon who has promoted threats of violence against journalists and said he would use the courts and the military against domestic enemies, end quote. And I fully acknowledge the belief among many members of Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base that the press has treated their dear cult leader just so abominably, and thus they deserve to be attacked either physically and or thrown in jail, because they're fake news. Which I have to say is such a lazy and slovenly slogan on which to base your support for someone. Fake news. First, that was just Donald Trump's half-witted extension of the liberal media lie. Second, there's no such thing as fake news. There is news and there are lies. And third, there is no bigger purveyor of lies than the guy who coined the phrase fake news. How ironic is that? Not to mention just sad. I played you a clip towards the end of last week wherein we saw and heard Trump boasting at one of his clandemic rallies that the place was full to capacity. Thousands couldn't get in, and that no one ever leaves his rallies early. And as we saw in the clip, it was far from being full. There were plenty of empty seats, and there were a bunch of people leaving early. And then Trump brought up the media, which of course he called the fake news media, and the crowd immediately started booing said media, when they could see with their own friggin' eyes that the venue was not full and that people were leaving early. But I guess when you've been chanting fake news for 9 long years, facts to the contrary mean nothing. And if Tuesday's result proved anything, it was that facts don't matter.